Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the newest episode of what once was a weekly podcast. We apologize. John's just not professional. That's all his fault. No, I'm kidding.
It is.
Here I am, slaving away, just trying to make it work. And John's doing stuff like having a life and traveling. This is just you're not supposed to have a life for being a chess player. He just didn't know the rules. It's not his fault, guys. So today we've got a bunch of wonderful news. I'll pass you over to John for that.
Yeah, we're basically going to cover a little bit of a March roundup with Magnus, Messi, and where the anal beads are back, basically.
Yeah. Well, that was the most enthusiastic punchline I think that we never prepped beforehand. I promise. Now, well executed, one take, Jake. We're doing great stuff when it comes to that. Okay, so the first story is what's the first story, John?
The St. Louis scandal. We might as well get the butt of the joke out of the way. The St. Louis scandal basically inspired an offer of a company that offers free stimulation toys, basically free vibrators to the playing field of the Toronto Candidates event. Basically, they are offering an opportunity for the players to stimulate their growth or stimulate something one way or the other to all the candidates in the Toronto event. I don't know if Carlson is going to be able to get his since he declined the opportunity to play, but maybe they could provide a pair for him.
Yeah,
I don't know if they come in pairs, honestly.
Look, I'm all for it. They're trying to turn chess into a spectator sport, and I for one think it's an amazing opportunity. I mean, I've always said that Mr. Hans Niemann should have taken all the sponsorships he possibly could have.
He missed this one, yeah.
Yeah, I know. Like this was set up for him. This was, he could have been a millionaire by now. I mean, it's the biggest fumble I've seen in a while. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay.
Just another news story to have you squirming in your seat.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah. Only the most relevant chess stories here. This is groundbreaking journalisming.
Thanks to Elon Musk's enterprising sense of humor and Twitter, basically, the whole world is lit up. And Piers Morgan should actually get a tester set.
Yeah, why
he was so excited about it. On the other hand, technology does benefit the opportunity to play chess, as we have the article of Nolan Arbaugh, a paraplegic who is unable to move, benefiting from Neuralink.
The story as done by chessbase.com. The 29-year-old quadriplegic plays chess online using a brain-computer interface. Now, this is just blatant cheating. There's probably stockfish in this. I mean, I might have lost him the other day. There was a guy who was playing some real suspicious moves. I'm kidding. But the point being, he's basically the first user of Neuralink, which has been a long foreseen advancement by Elon Musk, one of Elon Musk's companies. It basically allows paraplegics and such to bypass certain parts of their body in order to use different nerves, so they can now do stuff that they couldn't do before. He dislocated his C4 and C5 vertebrae, which made him a quadriplegic. He's paralyzed and has no sensation of movement below the shoulders. Nolan controlled a computer cursor with his brain using brain-computer interface. Check out this amazing piece of technology. Sorry, I correct. He's using it to control the cursor. But the technology is proposed to, in the future, make people able to do some bodily function, or at least that's what they're foreseeing.
Right. Absolutely. I think this would have been something that Stephen Hawking would have found useful in his day. I know that he had one working finger toward the end of his life, to a certain extent, and he was able to communicate and write his many books and things like that with what little muscle movement that he had left because of ALS, aka Lou Gehrig's disease. The official name, which somewhat eludes me. But this is a pretty happy story, actually. I think that this is something that will further not just technology and playing and using computers, but also in other ways. I think that if this technology works, I don't necessarily know how he is connected, whether it's Bluetooth or wireless or wired, I should say. But if it does work, I think that the opportunities are quite amazing.
Oh, I know. Like I'm looking forward to the Stockfish update. You know, what's 30 years of chess experience and top level chess training when I can just stick a chip in my face? I mean, truly, me and Magnus Carlsen now equals. I mean, to the power of computers. No, I'm kidding. But it is very, very, like you said, very nice. It's a very good piece of technology, and I think this is just the start of it. Um, whether or not
Yeah,
it turns
the
us into
possibilities
human
are endless.
androids, but we'll figure that out later.
Indeed. From that one where we were lilting a little bit towards sadness, we did lose the inspiration for the Netflix series The Queen's Gambit at the end of February, on February 28th. Lisa Lane, two-time U.S. women's champion, died at the age of 90. And this was reported, I believe, first in the New York Times. And you may find articles on ChessBase. And she was also the first player to be featured on the cover of Sports Illustrated shortly before Bobby Fischer was featured, I believe, which is pretty
I'm sure
cool.
Bobby loved that. Being beaten out by being
Well, he was
beaten
very
out by
young at the time. So I think he was
the.
14 when she was U.S. champion for the first time. He might have actually won it at the same time as she did. I don't recall the year off the top of my head. But basically, she was a U.S. women's champion twice in the late 1950s. Bobby Fischer became U.S. Champion for the first time around 1956-57 at the age of 13. There was a period of time where the U.S. Championship was held over the Christmas and New Year's holidays. So sometimes the tournament would start in one year and finish in the next. And it was very awkwardly placed so that you couldn't title the proper year on the tournament every now and then. So usually the tournament had both of the years, the 66, 67 U.S. Championship, etc., and so forth. And she was quite something as far as I believe that Bobby Fischer had a little bit of a crush on her to a certain extent. I don't know if you wanted to fill in with the article because she was in her first year at Temple University.
No,
Rogan?
yes. I
Yeah, I
just
mean,
want
she
to
noticed
demonstrate our
students playing.
amazing research abilities here, and say
That's all
that I've
right.
lost the article.
Oh, no. She was in her first year at Temple University when she noticed students playing chess in the lounge, and she fell in love with the game and started playing as often as she could. Within 2 years after starting to play, she won her first United States Women's Championship, which put her in the spotlight, not in part due to her late start and her meteoric rise, but also to her youth, due to her youth and appearance.
I mean, 2 years. That's amazing. That is
That is quite
groundbreaking.
amazing. Although I have to say that women's chess then was not as strong as women's chess now. But needless to say, she was like many women today, unhappy about the disparity of treatment and the earning between male and female chess players. She's like, I'm not the most important American chess player, she said at the height of her fame in 1961 when I think she won her second U.S. championship. People will be attracted to the game by a young, attractive girl, but that's why chess should support me by me bringing it publicity and ultimately, hopefully, money. Ironically, it would be Bobby Fischer, her compatriot, that would bring all the money to the game. And he was quite dashing himself. I will go for the fact that he was, somewhat handsome did help the publicity of the game. If we
Probably.
had, if he wasn't so amenable, or he wore a suit jacket, he dressed well, he walked with confidence and so
And
forth.
he didn't say too many controversial things right away.
And he didn't say all the controversial things when he was in his heyday, right? And the article goes on to mention that she did try to effect changes, but where after her attempts failed, she quit competitive chess. I have to admit that in her day, the money was very sparse, and the prizes for the U.S. Championship were usually physical, such as watches, cars, and things like that. I remember one year, Sammy Reshevsky won a car for first place, an automobile, and he did not have a driver's license, so he sold the car for before he could leave the tournament location. To a great extent, obviously, that was a bargain for both in that sense. But as it turns out, it's very sad to lose her, even at the age of 90. She was a Philadelphia native. We have Jennifer Shahade from Philadelphia. I'm trying to think of what other chess stars that we could have from that general area. But we lost her. There's no chance of her appearing in a cameo should Netflix decide to reboot the series.
Mm.
C'est la vie. And on other notes, we have the 10-year-old hailed as the Messi of chess.
Now,
This
when we
this article,
saw
oh
this
my God.
title, I'm sure John and I had similar thoughts, as in we were expecting something grand, something amazing. We were expecting, I don't know, we were expecting something we hadn't seen. We were expecting someone who was going to make Prague look like an idiot. Now, we didn't find that.
Not at all. Prague is still the hero.
Yes.
I first ran across this game as it was expounded upon by the perilous, the most popular purloiner of Magnus Carlsen games, Levi Rosman, did a
I mean,
recap of this
you could have
game
just
with
said
his
that and let them
requisite
guess. I think they would have got it.
enthusiasm. Yeah, his requisite enthusiasm actually captured my attention as I attempted to swallow this game recap of 10-year-old prodigy Faustino Oro beating Magnus Carlsen in a queued up game on chess.com. Apparently he was in the queue. He was streaming. Apparently the 10-year-old is a streamer on YouTube. And he was streaming, and Magnus Carlsen came up as his opponent in the pool of games. The queue threw them together, and I watched a little bit of this recap, and then I started to question the quality of Magnus's play
Mm,
as Magnus just seemed to fall
okay.
apart. I mean, I admit that Faustino did play a very enthusiastic and energetic game. But as Magnus's play just seemed to get a little bit more erratic, I started to question the time control.
Yeah, you started to suspect things that possibly the world's greatest player, this test may not have been fair or accurate. It's like
In fact,
at what minute mark, and I'm in what I'm sure was a 30-minute Levi Rosman video. Did you suspect that he was bullshit?
I think it started to become clear to me easily in the first 10 minutes to a certain extent because
Right.
I wasn't entirely positive what type of a tournament Faustino would find himself in against Magnus Carlsen. And I assumed in the back of my mind that it was at the very least, a titled Tuesday because there were no details of that manner that had registered just yet for me. And then, of course, as I realized, the only type of chess that Magnus plays with anyone casually or otherwise is a bullet game. I immediately thought that even more factors could come into play other than the time control, given Magnus's casual approach to chess.
Oh yeah, yeah. Casual approach to chess and alcohol.
Alcohol, music, DJing, whatever else Magnus might be doing, retrieving something from the refrigerator while playing the bullet game, who knows. But on
Yeah.
average, not to belittle Faustino's achievement, obviously I would love to win any form of time control game against Magnus Carlsen.
Hmm.
But to call him the Messi of chess after beating Magnus Carlsen, now granted his previous accomplishments also included beating Daniel Naroditsky and Hikaru Nakamura on chess.com, perhaps in bullet games as well. I mean, it's one thing to be very fast, but you have to be very, very sharp to be able to off those particular players. And as Anish Giri commented, what's all the hype? Carlsen would still probably beat him in a long classical chess match, especially if it's 14 or 16 games. Especially if it's 14 or 16 games. The odds of any one person being able to beat Magnus Carlsen on average is rare and unlikely. Speaking of which, yeah.
But what we don't know about this game is how many attempts he had. Like how many times did he play Magnus Carlsen and get absolutely butchered? Like,
right.
Destroyed. Like, I mean, and Naroditsky and Hikaru. How many times did he queue up, get the game, get destroyed before he got, oh, there we go, he got one.
Mm-hmm. I'm very proud of my one win in like 9 against, my favorite young grandmaster from Norway, or even an even stronger player, Sebastian Mihailov, who's an international master. I mean, he was like high 2700s, almost 2800 when I won against him, and also in a bullet game. But I don't tell people about it usually because it was a bullet game.
Yeah,
never occurs to me to take pride in winning in a bullet game.
There's a possible small asterisk next to the result.
Exactly.
But essentially, what we're trying to say here is, Levi Rosman is like he managed to fool, he managed to subdue, John's higher thought process for 10 minutes. Now that's
just under 10 minutes. Let's just round it off. It's just under 10 minutes.
That's an achievement,
But Levi's enthusiasm does carry quite a bit of weight as far as promoting chess and getting the point through, or getting the points of exciting chess across. Now, I believe interestingly enough, speaking of a player who did beat Magnus Carlsen in the second round of the Qatar Masters in a previous year, Suleimanov was facing the winner of ultimately the winner of the most recently concluded Reykjavik Open, which is an absolutely lovely event. I highly recommend it to everyone. It is limited to 400 players, so you do have to register early.
So, John,
and they do have a waiting list in case anyone drops out.
I want to take the point that you have personal experience with this Reykjavik place.
I just got back. In fact, I had celebrated the 30th anniversary of with my wife in Reykjavik last October, uh, and I had said something to the hotel clerk because they had a chess set in the lobby, and they're like, "No, we don't get many of the chess players. That usually is referred to the hotels closer to the Harpa concert and conference hall in the harbor area." And at that moment, I decided to look it up. And when I saw that it was taking place during the spring break of our school, I had always said that if this tournament ever actually fell on the weeks or on the days of spring break where I don't have to miss classes, I did have to miss a day of classes as I took the Friday off right before spring break to play in the tournament. But I have to play. And so I said, I guess I'm coming back in 6 months last October. And I immediately started booking, reserving, and entering the tournament at that point as soon as the registration became open. And I was not disappointed. The views of the harbor from the playing hall were lovely, having the calming water of the ocean. It was the weather, of course, was brutal. The Icelandic weather is quite incredible, I have to
Sunny,
admit,
bright, and
especially in
beautiful.
wintertime. No, we did have a couple of sunny moments, as the Icelanders like to say. If you don't like the weather, just wait 5 minutes, and
Right,
it changes. In fact, I had looked out, I believe, on the Saturday afternoon as I had overslept my second round game due to mixture of time changes and whatnot. It was nice and sunny on Saturday afternoon, and I said I'm going to head over to the hall. Ironically, for the second round, which began at 3 o'clock, and I looked at the pairings, and I did not find my name. Now, in the United States, if you miss a round, you don't get paired unless you show up in person to the organizers. Even though I had already emailed an apology to the organizers about oversleeping the round and forfeiting my early morning game on round two, I did not see my name among the pairings that I previewed online for the third round. And I immediately messaged, this was shortly before the third round was going to begin. I immediately messaged by a WhatsApp group that they set up for the players that I didn't see my pairing, and I'm once again apologizing for not having made it in the morning. And I also emailed the other organizer slash director who was doing most of the communication by email. And then shortly afterwards, trundled off to the site, and I got to take some photographs, see some of the players, and talk to Lonely Winter outside the playing hall, who was there visiting for the duration of the Reykjavik event. She is from Montenegro. I did not know that she was the streamer Lonely Winter at the time. That came later in an accidental story. But for the most part, I looked up at the wall board, and then I noticed that my name was up there for the third round, and I had forfeited a second game, and my whole world collapsed at that moment as I said to myself, this is inexcusable. How can you forfeit two games, let alone one, as I cannot recall ever forfeiting a game in my professional life to a certain extent. It's like, as a chess player, I mean, I can't recall forfeiting a game. I might have forfeited a game when I was younger, but I can't possibly conceive of it. But needless to say, I went to the tournament organizer, explained the situation. And, oh, don't worry, just come on Sunday. You're fine. They gave me the attitude that it happens all the time. And indeed, there was another 24 or 2,500 rated player who did not show up for the Saturday morning round, in addition to myself, along with a couple of other players. So I wasn't the only one who did not get up on Saturday morning, probably based on jet lag and whatnot.
well,
But I did get to see and talk to most of the 14 streamers who were visiting or playing in the event. and I was quite impressed with the number of streamers that were going on. They had 7 official streaming boards that I can recall. You had Dina and Anna Cramling with relatively designated boards. I believe they were along the Windows side so that you could have the cameras facing the playing hall. And I appeared on both of their streams at various moments. As I found out after the fact, people said, I saw you on Anna's stream, or I saw you on Dina's stream. Ben Feingold saying, hey, that looks like John MacArthur. What the heck? Even John MacArthur's there. And something like that. And someone commenting on Lula Rob's stream recap as well. And both of the players like looking up at me as you could hear my name being exclaimed from the stream recap commentator or whomever. But it was quite nice in that sense to get that recognition. But Atusa was playing there, Hikaru's wife, who also streams. Anna Maya had a lovely board in the corner of the streaming area. Zachary Sane from Canada, Chess Nerd, Rusha, who has not streamed in some time. Rusha Chess was playing, and she finished the tournament even with me at 5 points. My 5 points, however, was out of 7 games. Hers was out of 9. Anna Cramling and Alex Botez and the Cheese Mate finished with 4.5. Andrea Botez had a rather ill-fated Jobava London in the last round of the event, I believe. And she and Alexandra Prado only finished with 4 points, as it turns out. Lula Robs was just closely behind those two with 3.5 points. And Grandmistress Iron finished with 2.5 points. It was her second, possibly third, but I believe it was at least her second attempt at Reykjavik, and she was happy that she had improved on her score from her previous year. And it was great to hang out with the bulk of them. Andrea Botez was an absolute sweetheart. She was probably the most outgoing.
The ADHD medication kicked in, you know.
Yeah, she was quite good. I felt for Alexandra Botez as she had a player drop out. I believe it was in the 4th round. I think in the 4th or 5th round, she had an opponent drop out of the tournament after the pairings had already been made, which basically meant that she had no norm possibilities. Because you have to play all 9 games in order to have a norm chance. So even though on her way,
the biggest problem.
A title norm, the motivational socks were basically removed from her in that particular round. It's hard to get your game back up for an event when you lose part of your motivation toward a goal. One of my only goals toward the last round was to try to finish ahead of all the streamers, or at least tied with the streamers. But I saw that Dina, Anna Maya, and Zach were all paired against much weaker opponents. There was no doubt in my mind that they would win. And Dina finished with 6 points. She was definitely the champion of all of the streamers there. She took the tournament very seriously. Her fashion sense was amazing. She dressed to kill, and she did so appropriately throughout the tournament. I also felt for Vasily Ivanchuk. I did get to analyze with Vasily Ivanchuk casually in between rounds. He's a very approachable, easygoing guy. In fact, when I thought he was done analyzing, as we were looking at a position in the commentary area, he not only drifted away, I think he was probably preparing for his future opponent in his mind. He came back and he continued analyzing with us in yet another position that we had generated from another player's game. And it was quite cool to have him there, and he was very respectful of everyone's ideas, and his calculation skills were without a reproach. You know, it was always surprising us with moves that no one had considered, as he does in games against other grandmasters.
I think for people wondering, Vasily Ivanchuk, you know, he was a world champion challenger at one point, and one of the strongest players in the world for a very long time.
He was the only player to attain the number one ranking by rating while Garry Kasparov was world champion. He actually did it briefly. This is before live ratings, so that's it's like even though it may not appear in the supplements, the FIDE rating supplements, it was pretty well known that he had pipped Garry Kasparov while Garry Kasparov was world champion. That's exactly how strong he was. He was so brilliant and creative. And I had met him in 1994 when international organizer Sophia Rode had organized uh, the Winter Garden Chess Festival, the Days and Nights Chess in New York. There was an event at Jacob Javits and in the financial district. There was a blitz tournament with all the events, and then there was a supper club or a supper boat tour. So we were on actually this boat that cruised around Manhattan with all the top players, and that's where I actually talked to him originally. And he remembered this when I told him. I don't know if you remember, I met you in 1994. He's like, yes, I remember on the boat, and I was very impressed that because we didn't have any significant interaction at that time other than introducing myself. That was about it. So it was very kind of him to acknowledge that.
Yeah,
On the other hand,
amazing memory.
yeah, Anand had a similar. Fortunately, Anand has an amazing memory. I think all the top players have this amazing memory, which is good. Anna Kremlin was such a sweetheart. I mentioned that I'd met her in Paris, and she's like, "Of course, I remember you." Yada yada yada. Like I don't expect anyone to remember me, honestly. But ultimately, all the good players can be relied upon to be very personable and approachable. The top female prize was won by Leia Garofalina from an unnamed country playing under the FIDE flag. She actually finished in
an unnamed country in this day and age. What? Who could it be? I mean,
maybe because of their untamed aggression towards some other country.
yeah. Goodness, I wonder who that could be.
Nurgul Salamova, who is going to be playing next month in the candidates tournament for the women's championship.
Classic Irish name
Also
right there.
playing. She finished equal, but behind on tie breaks to Leia Garofalina. There was another young lady, 14-year-old Mayora Liu, a.k.a. Meow Meow, as her mother told me. She doesn't mind being called, but I'm like, this is not a name that you can actually call someone.
A little bit, yeah. There's some problems with it.
Interestingly enough, her mother had messaged me, she's actually a grandmaster herself, Yuan Shu, had messaged me for my photographs as she knew that I had taken photographs of both her playing Ivanchuk and her daughter playing Ivanchuk on the same day. Her daughter managed to draw with Ivanchuk, and then Yuan had to play her immediately after and was trounced accordingly. Unfortunately, he wasn't going to lose two games in the same day. But all in all, it was an amazing experience. I got to hang out with the French, Icelandic, Swedish teams. They were all very, very cool to hang out with and whatnot. The French team, probably the most prominent person on the French team that I hung out with on a couple of occasions was Matthew Cornet. And I was very impressed with his drinking ability while he was playing in the tournament until I found out that he was not playing in the tournament anymore. Apparently, he dropped out with 5 points or 5.5 points. He decided that he wasn't having a good tournament, and that was pretty much the end of it for him, as it turns out. But after my two forfeited games, I did manage to win 3 games in a row, draw one, win another one, and draw another one for 5 points out of 7. So I at least managed to respectfully finish the tournament. My last game, unfortunately, I will recount in a moment. as I give credit to Jules Moussard, who messaged me on Instagram for some of his photos as well. And all the other players were very kind, but most of all, Bogdan Daniel Deek for beating Suleimanov in the last round. Suleimanov, by the way, I'd mentioned before, had beaten Magnus Carlsen in the previous Qatar Masters. He was the sole leader of the tournament with 2 rounds to go at one moment. And while all of the players actually drew on the stage to achieve a good portion of the prize money, Bogdan Daniel Deek could have probably drawn his game. Suleimanov could have drawn his game to be in a massive tie for first. But they kept playing. They kept playing and they kept playing. Ironically, while this game was going on, I'm playing a slightly higher rated German player, not quite 2,200. And I, before the game, had already resolved to myself. I had fixated the result of a draw in my mind, and I'm thinking, I do not want this tournament to end on a negative note, right? So, of course, I'm defending on the white side of a Panov attack against this Caro-Kann. He knew that I played the Caro-Kann or liked to play the Caro-Kann as well. But I knew the Panov was probably my best bet. And needless to say, he pressured me and pressured me. At one moment, he did have a chance for a clear advantage, which passed, as he believed, my imposing threats in that position, thankfully. And at one moment, as he struggled in the time control, he actually achieved a slightly worse position with only 17 minutes on his clock remaining for the game and me having about an hour. He offers me a draw. And I preach this to my students and to everyone out there. Try to never let a given result enter your mind while you are playing. Always just play your best possible chess and let the moves speak for themselves, as Hans would say, and the result will take care of itself. If you think about a result or manifest any form of result, it will unfortunately happen despite your better efforts. And this fellow offered me a draw when I'm slightly better, and now I'm like, oh no, I really do want to play for a win.
Yeah. There is a useful piece of chess advice I heard, just a little into that. I mean, I think it's pretty useful. On the Perpetual Chess podcast, it said something along the lines of, if you're offered a draw, take the appropriate amount of time to you can even spend as much time as your opponent's got left, because in the end you can just take the draw, if he's offered it.
That is exactly what I chose to do. I actually spent about 10 to 15 minutes of time at the board while I was trying to recover from this. And then I took an additional 20 or 25 minutes walking around the hall looking for motivation. I wanted to finish ahead of the other streamers, and I saw who their opponents were, and I saw what their positions looked like. And I was like, can I finish ahead of the other streamers by playing for a win? I'm looking for any form of motivation to change my predetermined mindset of drawing the game. But ultimately, I decided that I wanted to watch the top boards on the stage, including Bogdan Daniel Deek playing Suleimanov. And so therefore I accepted the draw and took my 5 points out of 7 to the bank with a gain of rating points for the first time in a decade. I don't think I've gained FIDE rating points for the first time in over maybe 15 years of playing sporadically. But needless to say, Bogdan Daniel Deek did not disappoint, as he took a rook and bishop and 2 pawns endgame versus rook and knight and 2 pawns endgame. Oh, I'm sorry, the opponent also had a bishop all the way down to the wire. So it was rook, bishop, and 2 pawns separated. I believe they were both knight pawns at the time, B pawns and G pawns. And while they could have probably agreed to a draw at any time, they kept their game going. Now, mind you, the closing ceremony was being held at the Reykjavik City Hall, a 20-plus minute walk away. It felt like much more because of the weather when we were walking across. But the closing ceremony is at 5 o'clock, and it is 4:45, and these 2 players are still playing. And I looked at the organizers, and I said, are we really having the closing ceremony at 5 o'clock, or or is this a flexible thing? And they said, oh no, they won't start the closing ceremony until we get over there, obviously with the results. But so then we proceeded to watch Bogdan Daniel-Deek and Suleimanov play past 5 o'clock, living on their increment of their 30-second increment for the most part, as Bogdan Daniel-Deek eked out the position, ground Suleimanov down, and I couldn't quite tell how old Daniel Bogdan-Deek is. I believe he's 21 or 22 years old. He seemed a little younger in the interaction with him that I had talking to him. I met his mother, who was also there at the tournament. The three of us actually walked across to the Harpa. From the Harpa to the Reykjavik City Hall, and both Bogdan and I have our GPS Google Maps out, navigating these streets, walking a couple of back roads behind buildings, trying to make a shortcut. It was very amusing. But he was definitely a worthy champion to win the tournament clear with 7.5 points out of 9, when he could have easily done what I did with a fixed result in his mind of making certain that he draws the game. And many, many years ago, I'll channel a quote essayed by Gadakamsky from the Manhattan Chess Club days when it was still in operation. Gadakamsky mentioned that there is only one round every single tournament, just one, where you can show what you're made of to the best of your ability while everyone, including yourself, are tired, fatigued, and ready to have the tournament be over. There's only one round where you can show what you're made of, and that is the last round of any tournament. You have to play it with everything you've got if you really want to be a champion. And I was remembering this as I watched Bogdan Daniel-Deek grind down Suleimanov into a rook and pawn ending where he cut off the opponent's king, and then he proceeded to almost demonstrate relatively clearly why he was the superior player. And I have to congratulate him. Overall, it was an amazing experience. Terrific experience. Very good playing conditions. It was a little cramped in some of the corners of the playing hall when you were on the backboards. But aside from that, they provided water. They provided earbuds. They provided discounted food opportunities, discounted coffee, discounted beer tickets. And it was quite lovely overall. The Iceland weather, however, is the only not so friendly thing. If you wish to stay, I took an Airbnb about 5 minutes walking distance, maybe less than 10 minutes walking distance from the site. Anna Maya and Alexandra Prada were staying in the recommended hotel along one of the main streets, which was much further away. Ironically, a very affordable hotel, as I heard. And of course, there were other places to stay nearby. But all in all, an amazing experience.
It sounded wonderful. I mean, Reykjavik is one of those like chess pilgrimages that I think one day I'll do it. But as I've said to you before, John, it's hard to get there from New Zealand. For people wondering, to get to New Zealand, one of the most common ways, at least during COVID, was to go to Dallas, Texas, and then go to California. And then, I mean, that's after me going from Dunedin to Auckland, which is in country for me, and then go from Auckland to Dallas, then Dallas to California, then California to, I think, maybe even Britain, and then to Iceland, or
Crazy.
take a ferry or something like that. I mean, it's we're not joking when we're on the arse end of nowhere. But it's a brilliant chess pilgrimage, and one day we'll give it a go. We'll see John there maybe.
Yep. But I do want to thank Anna Maya and Alexandra Prada and Lula Robs for their hospitality and allowing me to hang out with them more than once on less than a half dozen occasions, of course, throughout the tournament. Lulu Robs' crew with Matt the Voice, aka Matthew Payne, who played in the tournament. He had to play Tanya Sachdev in the last round. It was rather unfortunate as he had to rush off to the airport I think he had to depart at 5 o'clock. And Johnny Halthorson, who I had met in Paris, also a really wonderful, great guy. He's a Swedish international arbiter and organizer, and he was in charge of or taking care of most of the Swedish contingent of youth that had traveled to the tournament. Matthew the Hare, whose last name escapes me. He had this amazing, model type hair, which is probably true of all these Europeans. They have good hair like you do, Rogan. It's like crazy, crazy good, styled, got a personality of its own. He was a sweetheart of a guy. We shared many a beverage late into the evening, and still made our rounds the next day. I'm trying to think if I left anybody out, because I apologize, but to all of my opponents who were very, what's the right word? Cooperative. I didn't actually win any of my first 3 games that I won. I merely just had to show up like I was in a raffle and collect the point as my opponents.
And then watch your opponents headbutt the landmines.
Exactly. All I did was play well, and my opponents were very cooperative in jettisoning their positions to me. A young man by the name of Zhening Hu, young Chinese fellow, maybe 21 years old, played so solidly against me that as my position was, I played as energetically as I could, but I offered him a draw as I realized that was the result that he really wanted out of the game. And before I went on to play another German player, and he played as well as he could. I had some really lovely games. I was mentioning to someone that I believe I played D4 in the first round, and I also, in the subsequent rounds, got in C4, Knight C3, and E4 in the final round. I like to vary my moves and my openings every single round. I don't like to play the same openings all the time. I was telling Ron Hay from Sweden, the only preparation I really did for this tournament to gain rating points was that of improving my calculation and being earnest in my assessments. And improving and working on your calculation skills is the number one thing you need as a lower ranked player, honestly. We're not going to find any novelties against a much stronger player that easily. You have to go for their throat, play your best, and be optimistic throughout. April will be a very busy month again. So therefore, we're going to try to get in a Toronto preview in the next few days before the Toronto Candidates Tournament starts. The lovely thing about Toronto is that the men's candidates event and the women's candidate event will be held concurrently in the same location. This has not happened in quite some time, if ever. If you can imagine, you have an 8-player round robin, and it's a double round robin, so they're going to play 7 games and then another 7 games. You really only have 4 boards. But if you have the men and the women playing together, now you have 8 possible exciting competitive games going on at any given moment. And it should be quite impressive that you can go, and hopefully they'll balance the coverages as women's chess coverage on X/Twitter was talking about. Hopefully they balance the coverage as evenly as they can between the men's and the women's matches. I will be there for the last 2 games in Toronto, April 19th, 20th, or 20th, 21st. I'm not sure what the exact dates of those 2 Saturday, Sunday games are. but I will be in Toronto then. But before then, my schedule, unfortunately, for the weekends coming up will be Baltimore next weekend, Chicago the weekend after, Atlanta the weekend after that, followed by Toronto. This will be the high school, the middle school national championships, and the U.S. Kasparov All-Girls National Championships. And in May, I believe on Mother's Day weekend, our Mother's Day weekend, Mother's Day for the rest of the world, I believe, was in March, the night of the Oscars. But I will be in scenic Columbus, Ohio, the second weekend of May. And I'm looking forward to it. So, Rogan, hopefully we will plan accordingly around these events.
Yeah, there's an exciting travel schedule there. Yeah. So, yeah, okay. So what we're going to try and be a weekly podcast. Also, we'll try and do something. Like, I mean, we've almost given up the ghost of regularity, but, we'll try our absolute best to be professionals.
And even if it's just me giving a tournament recap of the national championships and my experiences, but I will also, once again, Rogan, attempt to the best of my ability to capture some personality at one of these events in an interview. If I have an appropriate microphone handy, that will be good. All in all, yes.
Oh no, it's all good. No, I had nothing really to add there, like usual, actually. But go ahead, John.
Needless to say, Rogan pesters me all the time to get that priceless interview. If I have a chance next weekend in Baltimore, I will. I promised myself that I was going to do something along those lines in Reykjavik, and I did not get the chance, given the time differences and the exhaustion and the professionalism that most of the players were treating that tournament with. However, in the national high school, elementary, middle school, and girls' national tournaments, I will have a wealth of grandmasters to pester for advice, comments, and small interviews in the coming weeks.
Yeah, nothing like a little pestering to get stuff done. So I'm going to thank everybody for listening. If anyone's still here, congratulations. You are one of the few survivors. We thank you for listening. We do thank you for listening. I truly do appreciate it. And I'm going to wish you a good week. And
please make sure that you follow Kingslayer Sloan and tune into his channel on Twitch. I am Master Chess Dojo, all one word. Not like the Chess Dojo Live kids, but Master Chess Dojo, as I've been since 2004 on YouTube and Twitch. I also do a little bit of streaming on the social media platform X, which is IEX, a shadow-esque form of the former glorious Twitter, as it used to be, before it was brought down to just being an X.
John's going for the word count here.
I usually get messages on Instagram, so we'll see what happens. Needless to say to everyone, thank you for tuning in. Rogan and I stream almost every single day, give or take a day or two, depending on circumstances. And thank you for being with us.